Hello, everybody, and welcome to... I don't know what...
You didn't even check it.
Episode 9.
Episode 9
of Season 3 of Dudes of Kung Fu.
Oh, man. How are you, Alex?
Pretty cool. It's nice to be here. We very rarely do this. We've only done this 2 times before.
Yeah.
We actually did the podcast where we were actually next to each other. The very first one, our pilot. And then we did the live one at my school. Like, what was that back in Season 2 or was that still Season 1?
That was Season 2, I think.
Right.
And I want to thank you for tonight for wearing those not wearing those yellow shorts because they were very distracting.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Those special yellow shorts. Well, I'm also quite distracted because you are wearing open-toed flip-flops here for the podcast.
Says the man with friggin' Ajaxed hair.
Yeah, so anyway, we decided to, see each other because every now and again it's kind of a good thing to actually meet your podcast co-host.
Once a year like clockwork, I can stomach them.
And then so we decided to do this podcast live and also together in the same room. So we're sharing the same mic, the famous Yeti mic of Big Sean. So very cool.
We're sharing Big Sean's Yeti mic. That's as far as we're going with that. So for everybody watching on YouTube, there's a little chat room on there that if you ask questions, we may not ignore them.
we may ignore them.
Or we may not.
So, and the feedback from our last episode was pretty intense on the loyalty issue. I thought it would be kind of like a slow one. What did you get any feedback on that one?
We did get a lot of feedback on that. Oddly enough, more than a few people. I think I had like 3 or 4 people that actually thought we were speaking about them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and really good. I don't know the right word.
Nature?
Like good-intentioned people.
Uh-huh.
Like they're like, I had. They're like, one guy like was like, you know what? I had that same exact problem with my Sifu. Did he kind of tell you about it? And I'm like, no. I don't know anything about your situation. And in fact, it was what we spoke about wasn't anything that's happened to either Alex and I. It was more of just a
kind of general issues that arrive in the martial arts scene, things we've heard, and things that happen. But yeah, it wasn't directed at anyone specifically. Although I'm sure we could do that podcast as well.
Fuck yeah, we could spend some serious time on people.
Yeah, because I think for the most part, I mean, if we want to talk about somebody, I think we'll just say it. We don't have to. We don't have to kind of pretend like we're
right.
talking about people when we're not or whatever. So, yeah.
So the numbers are doing awesome for the podcast. We want to thank you guys. You guys, the downloads have been fantastic, and we really appreciate it. We also appreciate all the positive feedback.
And the negative feedback.
And the negative feedback. That helps. I know he's still here with the negative feedback. I get it. But, but I got to keep him.
We can do it like what they did on Saturday Night Live with Andy Kaufman back in the 70s. We can have a vote, and they could vote whether I get to stay or not.
Well, didn't Saturday Night Live do the thing with Eddie Murphy and the lobster? They had a live lobster. And they said people can call in whether they're going to cook the lobster.
Oh, really?
Or let the lobster go. By the end of the show. And they ended up cooking the lobster. And it pissed off everybody. We could probably do that with one of our students.
Yeah, we could probably do
By
that.
the end of the episode, whether we get to kill them or not.
The only thing is if they vote me off, I mean, who would you get to replace me?
You're irreplaceable. Anthony.
I tried.
Anthony, you're a replacement. That's it. I need a Wing Chun guy. You're right.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he actually did fill in for me one time. Yeah, sure, that's fine. I could think of other ways to dedicate my Friday and Saturday nights. Talking to you for an hour.
You're irreplaceable. We both know that. I tried.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So, cool. And so tonight we are going to discuss something a little bit not really a direct topic like the way we've been doing.
Well, yeah, no, in a way it is. So we spent 6 episodes speaking about the forms of Wing Chun. And we wanted to talk a little bit about the drills of both Jeet Kune Do and Wing Chun and people's focus on them and what the primary focus, secondary focus, and distractions.
Right. Yeah, and I think also part of that too is in a very similar vein to the Forms podcast that we do, kind of maybe give the idea of what we believe that drills and exercises are in the various arts and what they're important for, what they don't replace, and maybe give a little bit of context into why maybe people should pay a little more attention to training them a little more seriously.
Right, and the actual intent of the drills. Like, so for so many years, I looked at what I was taught as a beginner drill. Dan Chi Sao, go ahead, correct me.
Oh, it's good enough. I understood what you were trying to say.
So, Dan Chi Sao.
Oh, God, it's when you try to go Chinese that it hurts. You're better off just saying it like New York, so Dan Chi Sao.
Dan Chi Sao.
I got your Dan Chi Sao right here.
So for so long, I was taught and was under the impression that, Dan Chi Sao is just an idea of a beginner exercise, or the Pak Sao drill. Not JKD Pak Sao, where like you're like that high outside reference point, but just the idea of one person throwing punches and the other person just hitting Pak Saos as a drill just to learn and refine Pak Sao, when there could be so much more to it. And I think people lose focus on what the intent of the drills could be, or at least where intelligent practitioners and instructors can take drills, as opposed to just looking at them as something basic. Like, if you look at Pak Sao drill, and if you get away from the idea of it just being I know you know this. I'm just like, people, if they can get away from the idea of it just being a basic drill to learn how to Pak Sao, and look at it as more of a timing drill, that for entering. So if you do the Pak Sao at a distance, and you look at it as a time for entering, it becomes a drill on a much higher level than what it's presented at, and
right.
And I think people get so into the idea that it's a beginner drill that they want to jazz it up.
Sure. Also, I think because, especially if the drill seems kind of simple, and for the most part, drills should be simple, because
right.
overly complicated stuff is not really going to work under pressure anyway. People think, okay, well, I already got that, so what's next? As if just learning how to execute the drill in its most basic form was the entire purpose of the drill. And it's like, oh, well, you can do it in the air now go on to the next thing, as opposed to people trying to learn the lessons that the drill is trying to teach. They think they just need to learn a bunch of drills, right?
Right.
And so that tends to be, I think, a big problem in Wing Chun. We've talked about it before. On kind of a funny side note, this week we had an intro come into our school in New York, and I don't teach the intro, so my assistants, they teach it, and they one of my assistants came up to me the other day, and he said, actually, because he had just listened to our loyalty podcast, right?
Okay.
And then said, it was kind of funny because in a very similar vein, there was a student, I talked about the guy who's always going to stab you in the back is the guy who says, oh, I'm your most loyal student.
Right.
Because loyalty is a series of actions you do over time. It can't be faked. It's always like the students who are not convinced that they're going to be around have to tell you that they're going to be around, as if that's their only currency for you to want to teach them openly. It's like, well, the reason I never taught that guy all my secrets is because he didn't tell me he was loyal. Like, I mean, that's ridiculous. You show me you're loyal. You don't have to tell me you're loyal. So anyway, my student came up to me. He's like, yeah, Sifu, it's very similar to what you said on your podcast about, people kind of almost trying to convince themselves out loud that there's something they might not be. Because in this case, it wasn't somebody coming in and saying that they would be the most loyal one. It was somebody coming in and saying that they're very humble. Which I also find a very
awesome.
Like there's an old European quote, I forget who it's from, but it's like, humility is the highest form of conceit. Because also, and you see it a lot. You see it in memes, in martial art memes, and everyone's talking about how humble they are or whatever, which is such a ridiculous thing, because then they make humble they make humility almost like a contest, which kind of goes against the whole point of
right. I'll out humble you, man.
Yeah. It's like, yo, bro, my ego is like way smaller than yours. You have no idea, right? It's like the moment you're competing about humility or the puniness of your ego, that's kind of an egotistical thing in any case. Right? Sure. So anyway, this guy was like, yeah, you know what? I'm super humble. I'm ready to learn from the beginning and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of funny because if they join our school, that's what's going to happen anyway.
Right.
And then so he does the lesson. he, and during the intro lesson, like our intro instructor, teaches him like basic punching and some stepping and some kind of self-defense ideas with Wing Chun. And the guy's like, yeah, that was really great. That was amazing. Can you show me how to do something on the wooden dummy?
Exactly.
It's like, yeah, I'm so humble. Can you just show me that instead?
Right.
Like, so.
Can we do the knives?
Yeah.
Did you do the knives here?
It was very fun. I think I might have mentioned.
I'm ready for the knives.
I might have mentioned this on the podcast a long time ago in one of the very early seasons, but in the very early days of the European Wing Chun organization, like in the 70s and 80s, when my Sifu started teaching, you have to imagine in Germany in the 70s, the only thing that was around before Wing Chun came was like judo and karate. And suddenly in the mid-70s, Larrington comes to Germany and starts teaching Wing Chun. So it's like super exotic in the battlefield of karate and judo, right? So of course,
in Germany?
all the wannabe kung fu people come out of the woodwork. And, there were like two very funny stories. One kung fu guy comes to the castle where my Sifu taught, where I learned, and he goes, my Sifu can jump 3 meters high. Of course, it's Europe, so they use the metric system, right? So it's like over 9 feet, can jump 3 meters into the air. That's how good he is. And my Sifu just looked at him and said, well, in Wing Chun, we can only jump down 3 meters. and the other ones, the guy came in and he said, can you show me the double knives? I really, really, really want to see the double knives. My Sifu says, yeah, they're right there on the wall.
Right there.
So I think a similar thing exists with tonight's topic, which is drills. People sometimes think that just having learned the drill is enough, and they're not necessarily willing to put in the time and effort. They want to learn the next thing, or put a variation, or do something else.
Right. That's where the kung fu is, right? The kung fu is in the hard work of the drills. Too many people look at what they say they learned their kung fu from their Sifu, and they really didn't. Maybe they're introduced to something from your Sifu, but the kung fu, you learn your kung fu through the hard work of the drills and your Sihings and your training partners. That's where that's where your kung fu comes from. Your Sifu can show you the drill, but unless you're paying attention to the drill and understanding the intent of the drill and following through and not letting yourself get distracted by bullshit, that you're not gonna learn it. I mean, I know guys and you know what, I shouldn't say that, although I do know guys, myself included, who here when you learned Lapdog Drill got completely distracted with learning as many changes as you possibly can. It happens with guys. And they focus in on the changes in the Lapdog Drill as opposed to the actual intent of the drill. And then they have to kind of always outdo the last change, and to outdo the last change, they increase the complexity of the change. And it becomes a drill of changes as opposed to what the intent of the Lapdog Drill is. Right. You know what I mean? And then they lose focus. And especially in the Jeet Kune Do community, I see it all the time with drills that are quote unquote absorbed from other arts, especially Wing Chun. JKD people, I've said this before on the podcast, JKD people love to fuck up a good Wing Chun drill. Right. It's like leave it to a JKD person to take any drill that you can take and just screw it up. I mean, and oftentimes it's like with Chi Sao. You'll see guys do Chi Sao and they put on the MMA gloves and it kind of becomes Rock'em Sock'em Robot. Right. And the focus of Chi Sao then becomes to win at Chi Sao. Right. As opposed to saying, I'm going to learn whatever lesson I'm going to be learning tonight. One of my guys loves to tell a story about one time I was working Chi Sao with him, and he was just hitting me in the chest all night. Mm-hmm. And he actually said to me, we stopped, and he said to me, he was like, "Are you okay tonight?" He goes, "Because I'm really I'm tagging you alive. Right. You want to go into something else or?" And I'm like, "Oh no! I'm sorry. All I was working on was getting my foot when I was taking that step forward to see if I can off balance you a little bit with the step. Right. Everything else I really didn't care about at this point. I was just trying to really just work on that one thing. Right. And then he looked down and he realized that I was stepping basically between his legs every time I was stepping forward and kind of took a good position on him. Right. But if I let my ego get in the way, sure, and worried about someone who was my student, who quite frankly, between me and you, can kick my ass. If I was worrying about him hitting me in the chest, I wouldn't have been able to work on what I needed to work on.
Sure.
I need to work on things. Just instructors need to work on things. When Alex works with his students, he's teaching his students, but he's not going to teach himself bad habits.
Right.
So he's working on things.
Yeah.
So, and you always have to regain that focus as to what you're working on and not worrying about winning the drill.
Yeah, 100%. I think the problem is that maybe it's a matter of if students also don't have an outlet for doing normal sparring, some kind of normal practical sparring,
Right,
then
good point.
every drill has to become that, and it tends to replace the competitive aspect that one would have more in a proper sparring exercise. And even sparring doesn't necessarily always need to be competitive, but it's like if they don't feel that they're testing themselves enough, then they're going to try to do it in every single drill.
Right.
And they usually do it at the expense of what the drill is trying to teach them.
Sure, absolutely.
And so I struggle with this in my school as well, because the learning system is known, maybe just among learning people, I don't know, is being to a certain degree a somewhat aggressive expression of Wing Chun.
Okay.
And that's not entirely true, but I can understand why people would think that based on some of the videos and stuff that are shown. So sometimes I'll come into my school and I'll see like my high level guys, and they have a tremendous they have a tremendous opportunity that I didn't even have in the first few years of my school. When I first started teaching, I was already instructor level, but all of my students were beginners. So I had to work through all the beginner material while I was teaching beginners.
Right.
So I had to go over all the Tsunam Tao and Danchi and all the basic stuff and everything, which was great. And but I didn't have anybody at that time to train Byuji and wooden dummy with. You know what I mean?
Right.
Although I had learned it, but I didn't have like regular training
Sure.
partners. So basically what I did over the years, besides, obviously traveling and learning with other high level people, and I had advanced training partners as well, but I basically built up a school of training partners for me.
Right, sure.
And so I wanted to make sure that they got so good that they would start to give me a run for my money, rather than what seems to be kind of ubiquitous in Chinese martial arts. It's like you hold some stuff back so that you always keep them a little bit under your level or whatever.
Right,
but
right.
then of course it's easy if I beat them up, and sometimes
right.
my students, of course, because I'm their sifu, I say, come on, give me like a pak da from Chisao, and they just go, "Tup," and I'm like, come on, like okay, well, I'm not just showing a drill, like, really come and try to hit me, right? And I have to sometimes remind them to do that so that I'm still practicing against honest attacks. And I'll see my senior students, though, they have something I didn't have. I have so many high-level students now, they can come in and train with other people their level, people slightly higher level than them, and they can work on all this stuff step by step. And I didn't have a partner to do certain drills with. They have all the partners in the world, and the moment that two of them get their hands on each other, they just start trying to kill each other in sparring. And I just go, guys, you'd be a lot better at this kind of nonsense sparring thing you're trying to do if you just grabbed your partner and say, hey, let's just do this one thing again and again and again. Get really, really, really good at that.
Right.
Once we're good at that, we can maybe add one more element, and then we can try to put this one thing we're doing into sparring. But no, they get their hands on each other and they just want to kill each other. And I go, what I wouldn't have done to have had so many partners to train with when I began, and you guys are squandering it with just turning Chisao into kind of a death match. And they know better because they learned from me, but there's still something inherent in human nature. Oh, you also know the thing I know, let's just see who's better. The firstest with the mostest and the bestest, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, ego plays a big part. I want to go on record as saying, Alex, anytime you need someone to punch you in the fucking face, you let me know, brother. I am there for you. I'm there for you, bro. You wouldn't even have to ask twice.
Okay, Sean, could you be? Oh, no, all right.
It may take me a while to get out of the chair, but once I'm there, I'm all in, bro.
Awesome.
I am all in,
By the way, guys, for those of you who see me checking on my phone, because we are going live, I'm checking to see comments and questions and things like that. It's not that I'm already bored shitless with what Sean is saying.
Well, you are. But
like, the moment you start talking, I do this.
oh, my God.
Oh, somebody wants to know what bet I lost for my hair.
Yeah, I want to know that too, bro, because you know what?
There's some things better left off the air. And then somebody wrote, Kevin Dixon wrote, seems Alex found a Sherpa willing to take him to Staten Island. Well, I do have to say, when I was making fun of, like, you know, going to Staten Island in the early days, like, oh, you need a Sherpa to get out there. Well, for people who are familiar with New York City, getting out to Staten Island is a pain in the ass. However, last year, I became an adult and I got a car. And that's made things a lot easier because I can now just drive here instead of having to find the 8 Sherpas and going up the hill and then taking the little canoe over those you know, over those lakes and stuff. So finally I can get here in a timely manner. Only took me an hour and 15 minutes.
Now we got to build a wall.
Build that wall.
Build that wall.
Take all that money they're saving on healthcare and build the wall. Staten Island and the real New York City.
Oh my God. Let's make the island great again.
No one needs healthcare. We need a wall between Staten Island and Manhattan.
Keep Alex out.
Yes, perfect.
But Alex has chosen not to talk about his bet that he lost, but I can tell you that it involved a Shetland pony, and that's it, you know.
You told them? How dare you?
I didn't say what you did. I didn't say what you did.
So, on the topic of drills, so for example, one very iconic Wing Chun drill that nobody in the Yip Man Wing Chun lineage can agree on how it should be done, the Lapdog Drill, right? Lapdog Drill. You know, ask 10 different Wing Chun instructors, you'll get, you know, 13 different ways of how you should do it. But either way, it seems that regardless of how, like, the mechanics of how different styles interpret it, it's a pretty central idea to most of the Yip Man Wing Chun. So, for example, you can go and you can do the standard drill, whichever way you do it, or you can add a bunch of switches and bells and whistles and things like that, and that might be appropriate at some point.
Right.
But you know, at what point do we take, you know, fundamental exercise and then is it appropriate to start adding variations and things like that, or does it matter on the exercise?
Right, well, a couple of things. One, I mean, literally was just making a note to myself to say, I think we really got to stop calling these the earlier drills basics. I really think the word you use is perfect. Fundamentals. Yes. I think if instructors can stop using the word basic and start using the word fundamental,
yeah, I
think the students will start paying more attention to them.
Yeah, you might be right.
And speaking of paying attention, I didn't hear a word you fucking said.
Huh?
I heard Lapdog, but...
Yes, right.
What was the question again?
Oh, the question was, so if we practice the Lapdog drill, all right, you know, at what point does it make sense for us to start adding things onto fundamentals? So, like, at what level should a drill be before... Because obviously it can't be perfect, because it's never going to be perfect. But at what level should a drill be before we say start adding switches and things like that? Because I know people, the moment you start showing them something, they go, oh, yeah, but, you know, on YouTube, so you can also do this, and then you can also do this thing, and you can also do this thing. It's right. Like, let's just focus and do this thing first. Like, let's learn to be good at one thing instead of shitty at 3 things.
I think it really... obviously, it's based on the student, but I think a student should not only be able to verbalize what the intent of the drill is, they should be able to show it on a consistent basis before the next little grain is shown. So I think the second you show a switch or anything that's quote-unquote fancy, that becomes the obsession, because we all have egos, and the egos want to do what is perceived to be the latest and greatest thing. So if you just show them Lapdog without any switches and literally just have it when you're going to switch, okay, just switch. And let that be the focus of the drill, then when they are clearly at the level of they can be a seeing, they can be a skilled level at a point where you would entrust them to teach that to somebody new, that's when I would start teaching them the non-functional parts. Because in my opinion, the switches, while you can functionalize them in your head and say, oh, well, it's very good because if I get this, I can tansa. Most of the switches are just bullshit, in my opinion. They're there to fight boredom. And they serve some application. Don't get me wrong. I know they serve an application. But the application is just such a tangent away from the initial, in my opinion, initial focus of the drill. That and our egos make it that we want to just run with these switches. That the second we focus, the second we give these switches.
That was my daughter running in, by the way.
Who's adorable.
Who just came skipping in and said, "Hi, Daddy."
You know, do you know what I mean? I mean, like, do you agree? Disagree? I mean,
yeah. I mean, I think that there definitely needs to be a level of proficiency in an exercise before you go on to the next one. It's a little bit difficult. It's more challenging to do in a group setting where you have people learning at different paces.
Sure.
And sometimes you have to adjust your expectations a little bit. We build into our program a lot of what I like to call disguised repetition. So, for example, like just pick a random beginner class we might teach at City Wing Chun. So I teach everything according to a cyclical curriculum. So the students come in, they see on the board what they're going to do. They know if you're at Sunam Tao level, you're doing this and this. The Chumkyu beginners are here. The advanced people are here. So it's all standardized, and the students have cards with the entire curriculum depending on what level they are. And that gets checked off that they've learned stuff. That way, with such a sizable student base, we have to keep track of what students know. And if they're absent and they miss something, we also know that they missed, X, Y, and Z, for example, right? So what I like to do is we build this into our lesson plans. It's called disguised repetition. So, for example, a super beginner lesson, they might learn, for example, ganda, all right, against maybe like a low punch or something really simple. And then we would have a footwork exercise, like staying, chasing a moving opponent. Your partner moves back and staying on them with chain punches. And then we might have an application from Sunam Tao to keep somebody from doing a very basic tackle, like a double gum sound, move your leg out of the way kind of thing, right? And so they learn these three separate things in the class. But they're actually not separate, because what we do is we first start them with the drill, and they learn just how to do the ganso against the low punch. And then we have them coordinated with the hand. And then we have them learn the step. And then we have them coordinated with the step. And then we have them do it against a live attack. And then once they do it against a live attack, we put that away. And then we do this footwork drill where they're chasing their opponent or their partner. And then we show them the drill on how to stop somebody from tackling you. And then the new drill is they stand there, the person goes for a low punch, they go and defend, he tries to move away, they follow them, and then suddenly tries to go to wrestle them, and they have to apply that one. So they now have to, we've essentially taught 3 things in a 1-hour class.
That's fantastic.
But we do it step by step, and then at the end we put it together. And yes, they're beginners, so they're not going full out on sparring, but there is a certain amount of, even though it's within certain parameters, there's a certain amount of adjustment they have to do, so they start to learn to use the movements flexibly. And that would be like a beginner class.
Right.
And then we have a lot of what we call disguised repetition. Because at the end of the day, we taught them, the guy attacks you, step in, stay on him, and if he tries to wrestle you, control. And that's it.
Right, and that progressive resistance training that you just described is perfect. And that's the reason you can't learn Wing Chun on a YouTube video, and you need a school or teacher like Alex. That kind of, the thought that went into that is on a level that you just don't find even in many schools. You know what I mean? So one of the frustrating things I hear, and not to go as a sidebar, is when people saying that they're learning their system in their basements off of YouTube.
Right.
Play that on repeat, what he just described to you. The amount of thought that just went into that, the way he runs his school. This is why you need an instructor. This is why I really believe one of the major reasons you need an instructor is for things like that. When I was in Brooklyn, I was teaching just straight Jeet Kune Do. We used to do something similar in the hidden repetitions kind of thing. I didn't call it that, but we would take an idea and hide the idea within a series of drills. The series of drills would be, we'd say to fight the boredom. The student didn't have to realize that they were doing this one thing over and over and over again. And you just say like, okay, this idea of someone's coming at you with jab cross, and we would work this idea of like, stepping off to the side with a cut punch, and then come in like cross, hook, cross. And then the next, and we'd work that drill a little bit, and then we'd work like jab cross, and it'd be like catch, cut punch, knee, and catch, cut punch, knee, and then we'd run that drill for a little while, and you'd work, and then it could be like, cat, cut punch, whatever, the guy would come, and you come bob weave, and then hook, cross, hook. And in my notes for the night, because what I would do is I would put down the main topic and who was there, so I could watch to see who was doing what. I was just working the cut punch, the angle, step off angle for the cut punch.
Right.
Everything else for the night was just gravy.
Yes.
It was and the students were in their head saying, "Well, what'd you cover tonight?" "Oh, well, we did bob and weave off of this. We did this. We did this. We did that." All they did in my notes was step off cut punch.
Right.
Because that was the primary focus.
Yes.
And once you understand what the focus of a drill or a series of drills, it helps you stay focused. But you can't let yourself become distracted. And so what's different than, say, a bunch of switches in Lapsau versus what I was just doing and what Alex was just doing was a bunch of switches in Lapsau lead to bad habits. A bunch of switches in Lapsau take away from the initial purpose of the drill. What we're doing, it's just enhancing the initial lesson of the drill, you know? That's
Absolutely.
It's the idea. So I'm doing, like, say, we'll do, like, say, a cut, this angle cut into something. We're not ruining the integrity of the angle cut. But if you're literally going, you know, doing Lapsau drill, Lapda, and it gets to the point where every rotation you're in your head, instead of thinking proper structure, instead of thinking punching straight, as opposed to, like, you'll see guys start doing back fists instead of like a punch.
Right.
And I think that's all because of they're worried more about the changes. Is he going to change on me now? I got to be ready for this change.
Sure.
And you're taking away from your training partner. You're taking away the focus from your training partner, right?
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I think that's a problem when you know, and I think that's the reason why sometimes when we teach things, that kind of progressive resistance way of doing it is usually the way to go, because it's kind of how you can add variety but still teach the same thing.
Right.
And in that way you can, you know, give the students a very satisfying hour and a half long class, whatever it is, where you essentially, like your example, you taught them, you know, step offline, do a cut punch, where that's kind of the main note takeaway for the end of the day.
Right.
But maybe you use 5 different things to kind of teach that.
Right. Sure.
And so, and I think that's essentially how our entire lesson plan is done, because, you know, when you have a large group, you have to make sure that the classes are fun.
Absolutely.
And how do you make a class fun and still teach them, you know, what they need to know?
Come there.
I hire you, Sean. That's exactly how you do it. And
I bring the funny, motherfucker.
That's right, as you can tell. So, you know, and that seems to be a formula, but it also seems to not just be a way to keep students happy and having fun, but also it seems to be a much better way to present the material, because, you know, traditional martial arts, let's say Wing Chun, because it's the main example when we talk about traditional martial arts, tend to suffer from 2 main problems. You either have people who are unbelievably overly traditional, so it's like you just do this one thing,
right,
and then you're not gonna do anything else. You can't ask any questions, you know, and you're never gonna get any context or anything like that. And then you have the people that essentially turn a Wing Chun class into a fight club. Right. And it's like, here's a couple Wing Chun moves, here's a Pak Sao, here's a Tan Sao, here's a Bong Sao. Okay, go ahead and put a helmet on and gloves and then go and do that stuff. And then so you have kind of like, that is for me the 2 opposite extremes.
Sure.
And perhaps a third one are the people who believe in kind of chi and all that kind of magical nonsense, right? But I leave them kind of out of the thing. Right. I'm just talking about in terms of kind of orthodox Wing Chun. You have people that are like, oh, you don't need all the drills and stuff like that, just learn a couple basics and then you're good to go. And then you have the people who are like, no, you need to do Bong Sao for 8 years before you learn Tan Sao type thing. And then so Wing Chun tends to suffer from these kind of extreme dichotomies. By the way, speaking of that, the third one, did you hear what happened in China last week?
Yeah, that
with the Tai Chi guy and the MMA guy.
Yeah, talk about it a little bit.
So so if you it's all over Google, it's all over the social media or whatever. So a Chinese MMA guy, so a Chinese practitioner of MMA, basically had some kind of open challenge to traditional Chinese martial artists, and his first victim was somebody who was apparently a master or a grandmaster of Thunder style Tai Chi.
Fucking A, man.
All right. And it's not to disparage Tai Chi or whatever. I have a lot of really good friends who practice Tai Chi, and there's some really great Tai Chi practitioners out there. And also for what Tai Chi is, if you have a really good and solid instructor, there's a lot of fantastic life-changing benefits from it. My issue is when somebody who primarily trains Tai Chi forms thinks that forms training or their push hands training is going to translate into there's an MMA athlete standing in front of them who wants to punch them in the face, okay? Now, Wing Chun people suffer from the same thing. This isn't to put Tai Chi in a box or anything like that. There's plenty of Wing Chun people out there who think that because they've learned the forms or they learned some Chi Sao or whatever, that somehow equates one-to-one to the same type of fighting skill that somebody who practiced MMA has. And this is unfortunately not the case. And so this Chinese MMA guy knocked out the Tai Chi guy within 10 seconds.
Ouch.
Yeah. So it was not even like, like the Tai Chi guy tried to engage him and wrestle him. So it was like, there was like really no chance. And now this guy has, he's now become a bit of a pariah because he's essentially insulted all of the Chinese martial arts people, saying, Chinese martial arts are dated and they suck and, I can beat all of them. And of course, it's like, well, that's kind of an old message. It's also kind of a safe thing to say at this point, you know what I mean, in the age of MMA and things like that most traditional Chinese martial arts are probably not up to the standard of like a professionally trained MMA fighter. But the problem is he's also Chinese. So it's really aggravating the Chinese that basically a Chinese person is using what they would consider Western martial arts. I mean, we know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu originally came from Japan, and there's obviously a lot, and Thai boxing is an Asian martial art. There's obviously a lot of Asian influence in MMA, but essentially for the most part, MMA is viewed as a Western thing, right? So now he's going off challenging other Chinese martial arts people, and there is a Hong Kong businessman who's so fed up with this guy that he's put up like $1.4 million to any traditional Chinese martial arts guy who defeats this guy.
That's awesome.
So now it's becoming a thing. But one of the things I think the guy did, like it's a legit thing to say, hey, look, some of these guys who practice Tai Chi in a park, they need to understand that does not equate to fighting skill. That doesn't mean that Tai Chi is no good. But you can't talk about somebody who goes into an MMA gym and does boxing and hits the pads and wrestles and does jiu-jitsu and Thai boxing and goes into the ring against resisting opponents and then thinking that your mastery of the thundercloud form and your ability in push hands somehow is going to equate to keeping this guy from putting the hurt on you, right? Yeah. So it's understandable that he wants to make that statement, but he really pissed people off because he insulted Bruce Lee. And he said,
I want to fight.
Yeah, and he said, and if you put Bruce Lee in front of me, like in his prime or whatever, I would also knock him out in 10 seconds. Oh. So, and then that was the part where it was kind of like, yo, bro, I was with you on the message of getting the Chinese, the very traditional Chinese guys who believe in that. And the Tai Chi master he fought was not an old guy. It was just somebody who really believed in that stuff, right? And I love Chinese martial arts, and I believe that Wing Chun is very practical if it's taught correctly and in the right way. But it was like, bro, I was with you until you talk shit about Bruce Lee. You know what I mean? Because first of all, a big part of MMA, a big part of the idea, and a big part of what's wrong with traditional martial arts, Bruce Lee was already saying that in the 60s.
Sure.
And the thing is, it's like, say what you want about Bruce Lee now, you get the comparisons. So how would Bruce Lee fare if he was in an MMA fight or whatever? But the thing is, like, but you have to always put people in the context of the time period that they grew up in, right? You can also say the same thing about Helio Gracie and say, well, if you put Helio at his prime in a jiu-jitsu tournament, not even an MMA tournament, against the high-level jiu-jitsu guys who are out now, I don't know how well he would fare. And if you put him in an MMA fight in his prime men with the guys who are here now, I don't know how well he was fared. Does that in any way tarnish the tremendous accomplishments of what that man did as a pioneer? Not at all. And people are so ready to kick down this up. And we have to realize that whether we do Wing Chun or Jeet Kune Do or MMA or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we are standing on the shoulders of these people.
Absolutely.
And they are the ones who paved the way for us to be doing what we're doing. And they're the ones who created this. And then to go here and be like, Bruce Lee is nothing, or Helio Gracie is nothing, or whatever. It's not only talks for a complete lack of respect, which should be taught in martial arts, but also just a complete lack of understanding about the context in the times which people are in. Look at even the MMA fighters from 10 years ago wouldn't be able to hang with the top guys from now. So what do you think is going to be the case 30 years from now?
Exactly,
you know what I mean? Where people are going to be like, well, is Anderson Silva really the greatest? Or was GSP really the greatest? When we've now had, 30 years from now, generations of people who quite frankly, will probably be head and shoulders better than them.
Right.
So, but does that denigrate? They were those people in the landscape of the time period they were in, and that's what made them great. And so I think that's my only issue with this MMA guy challenging these Tai Chi guys.
Yeah, don't mess with Bruce Lee. Come on.
Yeah, you can't talk shit about Bruce Lee. Come on.
And speaking about Bruce Lee, there's a big thing in JKD saying whether he was the father of MMA or not.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And guys get real upset about, regardless, about whatever side they're on, like, is he the father of MMA, not the father of MMA? And I kind of feel like, who cares? How adorable is this?
This is the little one. This is Lucia. And
you want to come be on camera?
Exhausted her attention span. Come here, Maria. Oh, and the other one is too shy to be on camera. Go to your sister. All right.
So whether Bruce Lee should be looked at as a hero or not is one thing. Whether he was the father of MMA, you know what? Who cares? Why are people getting so upset about that?
First of all, and it's not even like Bruce Lee somehow claimed himself to be the father of MMA, and now it's a matter of defending a claim that he made. I mean, the man was dead for 30 years before that even became a thing.
What Bruce Lee's relationship to MMA, whether you believe he's the father of MMA or not, I think we can all agree that he's one of the innovators in adding a modern training regime into martial arts.
Sure.
Okay, so whether he was into mixed martial arts, quote, emphasis on the word mixed or not, regardless of what your outlook on that is, we can all agree that he had an innovative way of training. That the guys that trained in his school, I say guys, I don't know if any girls trained in it. That's a good question.
Says Linda, she trained a little bit, especially in the early years.
Yeah. So the people that trained in his school were training as athletes with an athletic mindset. They were training as if it was a boxing gym. When you look at the pictures of the old Chinatown school, these guys were moving like boxers. They were, moving around. They were working on heavy bags, speed bags,
and all those custom pieces of equipment,
focus mitts, and that they were taking catcher's mitts and creating focus mitts out of them.
And nobody was doing that in the 60s. Right. I mean, and
so
people don't realize
this kind of innovation was something that I think came from boxing, in that this idea of, not that he was copying boxers or trying to incorporate boxing into MMA, he was trying to incorporate the methodology, right? The aliveness, the idea of moving with a purpose. As Steve Golden mentioned on the podcast, the idea of moving with a purpose, working with a live person in a progressively resisting manner. So that was where Bruce Lee was an innovator in MMA.
And he was doing this in the landscape of the 60s when nobody else was doing anything like that. The karate tournaments at that time, for the most part, were point based.
Right.
You had this kick landed on you, it would have been a death blow, so I get a point.
Right, exactly.
Right? And so he was the first one to say, like, we're gonna put on like chest guards and helmets and these big Kenpo gloves.
Catcher's mask.
And we're gonna actually see what's what. And nowadays we take that for granted because that's kind of what everyone's doing. But he was really the first one to do it. And he came from a traditional Chinese martial arts background. He wasn't even American. He was American. He had citizenship or whatever, but he grew up in Hong Kong.
Right.
And he came here as a total outsider and ended up being more innovative than the people who had grown up in this country. And America is a country that's known for its innovation. And he was basically a Chinese guy who came and did this in the landscape of extremely racist 60s, right?
Absolutely.
And while that's totally taken for granted now, I mean, it's pretty remarkable that he did this given his background and that he had done all this stuff by age 32.
Right.
People also always forget that. It's like you think nowadays with the ability to reach a mass audience, we can do podcasts now.
Right.
We can, we can go live on Facebook. We have all these things. And you have to mention, none of these things existed. But he was able to make an impact, the likes of which people with 2 million following on YouTube, they don't have that kind of huge cultural impact that Bruce Lee had. And so I find it really, really just a bit ignorant to kind of take any issue with him. And also, like, because first of all, he never made any kind of claims as far as that goes. The other thing too is in every once in a while I listen to, I really like Joe Rogan's podcast. I think he's got one of the best podcasts. And he every once in a while, like when the topic of Bruce Lee comes up, he will sing Bruce Lee's praises as an innovator and looking at his notes and things like that. And he'll occasionally clown Bruce Lee too or whatever, because that's kind of what he does. But he did say something that actually bothered me on a podcast. It was a few weeks ago. He mentioned it's a big misunderstanding, and of course Joe Rogan is a huge audience, and so people listen to him and they kind of take what he says as gospel to a certain degree. And the good thing about Joe Rogan is he often will correct himself if he makes a mistake, and he's not. And this is not to say that he was purposely misleading anybody, because he's definitely not that dude to do that. But he said something like, well, a lot of Bruce Lee's notes were plagiarized from boxing books, and he kind of basically said, well, I don't really know if maybe he should have credited them or something like that,
right,
because it's totally wrong. And anyone who knows Bruce Lee knows, wait a minute,
right?
In those days, you didn't have a computer where you could just type up your notes, or a phone where you have an app like Evernote where you can put in your notes, or auto dictate like the same way we can do it now on our phones. You wrote notes in your books, or you had a notebook and you liked this paragraph and this thing and you wrote it.
Right.
So at that time, there weren't really a lot of Kung Fu books, thankfully for Bruce. So he had to get books on fencing, boxing, things like that. So he took notes on the books that were out there at the time. And these were his personal notes, which were never intended to be put out there.
Right, exactly.
And then when Linda Lee collected those things and put out the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, which came out after his death, everyone was like, oh, this is great. And then a few years ago, oh, but they totally plagiarized it. He didn't. Those were his notes.
Right, exactly.
And he never said that he was the one who wrote it. And so Bruce Lee, in that case, he gets unfairly charged with that, when those were just his personal notes that were never intended to be seen by anybody else, So anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. So.
And you mentioned the Kempo gloves, which so many people now call the JKD gloves.
Right.
Bruce Lee used them. Folks, they suck. They are horrible. Don't use them. Yeah, Bruce Lee used them in 1968. They're horrible. Don't use them. Unless you buy expensive ones, they're sewn up that they create seams to give it that look. And they use this plastic thread, and the seams will cut you. The reason people spend a lot of money on good boxing gloves and good MMA gloves is that there's no exposed seams, and seams will cut you. And these Kempo JKD gloves that Bruce Lee used back in 1968, while innovative at their time, are horrible today.
Right.
There's better products on the market. I get it. You want to look like Bruce Lee and you want to have the same gloves he used because it looks cool. It does. I get it. But for the safety of yourself and your training partners, don't use them anymore. Hang them on the wall. They'll look badass on the wall. But if you use them, if you're going to use them, make sure you buy good ones that do not have exposed seams.
Yeah, I think I had an expensive pair of those when I was a teenager. I saved up the money to get the good ones. I mean, the advantage is they have kind of I don't use them now, but I had a pair when I was a teenager, is that they're thick, so you have the boxing glove feel of there's enough padding where you don't feel like you just have a knuckle duster on your hands.
Right.
But at the same time, you can lapsao and paksao, which I think, given his Wing Chun background, was kind of what he was looking for, so that he could also punch, but also grab and pak and things like that.
Oh yeah, I'm not mocking Lee for using them. I think Lee was innovative in using them. I just think that right now we have other products available to us. And I think we have to follow Bruce Lee's lead and use or create the most innovative things we can right now.
Yeah, given the technology we have now, what we know, all these kind of things.
Right, exactly.
And also by following his lead, we should also wear the yellow JKD tracksuit.
Dude, first of all, I would look freaking hot in the yellow JKD tracksuit. And when I say hot, I mean like me, a fat man in the desert. All that nylon. That would be like... And
that would actually be a great Halloween idea for both of us. You could go in the yellow tracksuit, and I could go as Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the Hakeem outfit, which is funny because I'm very short. And then we could just go there, and then we could have a duel wherever we go, and that would be like our shtick. I say we go for it.
I think no.
You seem distracted by your phone, Sean. But
well,
are you trying to order the JKD tracksuit now? Or I should say the Game of Death tracksuit.
I'm actually shocked. It doesn't come in my size.
Wow, that's intense.
That really is annoying. I was looking to see if there was any messages I wanted to respond to.
Got it.
I do want to talk about one thing real quick on a little bit of a personal note. one of my students was awarded a full instructorship in Jeet Kune Do under me, Chris Kennedy, and it's a long time coming. Dude's worked hard for so many years. He's with me for so many years, and he's an awesome dude. And I just wanted to say that, if you live up in that area, you should be training.
What is that area, by the way?
Oh, you know what? I should have said that, huh?
Yeah, right. And if you live up in that area, and I'm
but
going,
you
wait
know
a
what?
minute.
He didn't pay me for that part.
Oh, there you go.
No, he was up in Marblehead, Massachusetts.
And where's Marblehead in relation to Boston? Because that's the only thing I know.
I'm from Brooklyn. I know Brooklyn and not Brooklyn.
Oh, so you don't know? That's
so
what
Marblehead's not in Brooklyn.
Marblehead's not in Brooklyn.
I'm actually going to be going there this summer.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Have you ever driven in Massachusetts?
No, I've been in a cab in Massachusetts.
That's the reason why they call them massholes, man. The driving there is unbelievable. Nicest people in the world, but holy crap when they get behind the wheel of a car. They make Jersey drivers look like they know what they're doing.
Wow.
Yeah, it's intense. They're just like cutting over, no signals, it's insane. It's unbelievable.
Well, I'm actually looking forward to it a lot. I'm going to go visit
They have
Seth.
a high road rage potential over there.
Chris and Seth, I'm going to go visit up there in the Marblehead area. And we're gonna have some fun and
awesome.
Yeah.
We also also on a personal note too. I have as I mentioned before, this year's the 15-year anniversary of City Wing Chun, my school, and I have a yearly week-long training camp that I do. It's called the ITC, or Intensive Training Camp. It's Monday through Friday. It's 6 hours a day. Very intense training, lots of sparring, lots of drilling. It's very, very hardcore. And then on the weekend, I usually have a guest instructor come over and teach for 2 days. So it's like a 7-day camp. 5 days with me and then 2 days with a guest instructor. Well, this year, since it's the 15-year anniversary of my school, I decided to do something a little bit different. And so instead of inviting one of my, Kung Fu uncles or Sibak or whatever from Hong Kong to come and teach a Wing Chun seminar, I'm actually inviting a Hung Gar master, Mak
Shit, I thought it was
Kong.
going to be me. Oh, here I am. I'm thinking he's going to ask me on the air.
That's right. Sean, will you teach at my ITC?
No.
Oh, now he's totally dissed.
No.
Now this is going to be a sore point on every other podcast
No,
until
okay.
then.
We can do hunger.
So my good friend Mak Kong from Hong Kong, he's one of the most amazing Hung Gar masters I've ever seen, and just one of the best masters in Chinese Kung Fu in general. His ability in the practical application of Chinese martial arts is unbelievable, including with the weapons. And his knowledge of Southern martial arts and Northern martial arts is really intense. So he's going to do a workshop the first day where he's going to teach my students the difference between Northern styles and Southern styles in terms of like the DNA and how they're kind of developed. And then also how Wing Chun and Hong Kong are quite similar, and then show them some basic applications. And for my advanced students, he's going to maybe do some long pole stuff with them, the original Lam Sai Wing Lok Tin Bun Guan, so they'll get to see what the the pre-Wing Chun version looked like. And then the second day, I have Sifu Jim Rosalando, who's been a guest on this podcast before, and I will have him teach. I would like him to teach the first half of the original Siu Lin Tao form, which is the form that predates Siu Nam Tao Cham Kyu Biuji. Before that time, it was one long form. And then during the 1850s, that form got split into 3 parts, and that became what we now know as Siu Nam Tao Cham Kyu Biuji. But he knows the original long form. So I want him to come and teach that. Oh, no, that was my watch. Sorry. Oh. So I want him to teach that for the first half. And then the second half, I'll have him teach the Leung Chun, Pin San Wing Chun, and then maybe have him do some long pole with my advanced guys. So my guys on that weekend, my advanced guys will get to see some of the original Lam Sai Wing long pole, and then some of the Wing Chun long pole from the Leung Chun
That's
era.
awesome.
So, and I figured that'd be pretty cool. And we also have a banquet on June 24th. It's the 15-year anniversary
Wait, food.
banquet.
I got to be involved in that.
Yeah, well, you're 100% invited to it. That goes without saying. And it's down in Chinatown. We're going to put all this information on the Sifu Alex Richter page, City Wing Chun page, starting next week. So if you guys happen to be in New York and you want to come to our 15-year anniversary banquet, I got guests coming from Hong Kong. We have lots of my Kung Fu friends, my students. There'll be demonstrations, things like that. June 24th, Saturday in the evening around 6 o'clock. You got to buy a banquet ticket in advance to go. We'll have all that stuff ready for you guys. You guys are more than welcome to come down. Sean will be there. So you can meet the dudes if you want to come down. So that'd be awesome. And looking very much forward to seeing you guys there if you want to do that. And if you guys want to do the week-long course, especially if you guys come from a WT or Learning background, which makes a little bit more sense, you guys are more than welcome to sign up to do the ITC, although the spots are limited. It books up pretty quickly, and I cap it at about 40 people because beyond that it gets kind of nutty. So
sure, yeah.
So and that's that. So
what do you got coming up this week for you? Anything going on?
Well, finishing touches on the Chumkey book. I got a bunch of projects that are coming down the line in terms of going to Hong Kong and doing some very, very cool stuff, which once everything is settled, I will be more than happy to announce on the podcast. We'll let our listeners know. But yeah, a trip to Hong Kong is coming late in summer, and perhaps a few more this year as well. So
nice,
yeah, lots of stuff going on. And was there anything else you wanted to add?
No, for me, I'm working on some stuff in Wing Chun that I never worked on before with my Sifu, and I'm having a lot of, that's going to be a lot of fun, and guitar.
Yeah, awesome.
I want to be the next Stevie Ray Vaughan with my guitar. I've switched from country music.
What about Billy Ray Cyrus?
Okay, so I used to play mostly country music, but now I've been trying to learn how to play the blues. And I don't know if you like the blues at all, but
right.
But I'm like, really, I wasn't ever really exposed to it.
Sure.
And now that I've been exposed to it, I've fallen in love with this style of music. And so, of course, my wife doesn't believe me that this requires me buying another guitar. But,
that's the tough sell.
But I'm having a lot of fun learning how to play the blues. And, things are good. And, by the way, folks that have written in for the autographed pictures of the dudes, we have them. And they will be going out. I have all your addresses.
That sounds scary. I know where you live.
I know where you live. I looked at Google Maps, and some of you live in scary neighborhoods, so I'm going to mail them.
The other ones will be delivered personally by Sean by hand.
We just had a whole case of these delivered to us.
Oh, God.
And Alex and I have been sitting here.
We'll hold on to most of that case for the rest of our lives.
And Alex, I can tell you, Alex and I have just signed every freaking photo we had printed, which was a number that you wouldn't believe.
Yes. Intense, I'll tell you that much. It was it was like the fire at the circus. So, it was intense.
We're going to take a second mortgage on the house, buy some postage, and mail these things out. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week.
Cool. And as always, guys, like us on Facebook, follow Dudes of Kung Fu on Twitter, and write in any messages you want to the Facebook page and let us know what you think about the podcast and any topics you might have, even if it might take us a couple seasons to get to you. Feel free to share these episodes when they come out. It really helps us a lot. And go on to iTunes and Android on the podcast apps and review the podcast. So when people are totally new to it, see those reviews. It makes them more likely to listen to the podcast and subscribe and let everyone else know about it. And that's it for this week. We'll see you guys soon.
Later, guys.